Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. We're going to wait just a few moments as Zoom takes a couple of seconds to get everybody in and registered and ready to roll with our tour today. All right, my name is Erin Lurie, and I'm the head of adult audiences at Hillwood Estate Museum and Gardens here in Washington, D.C. I'm so glad that we can gather together virtually, and I hope that those of you who are in the DC area will come and visit us. We are open Tuesday through Sunday, 10 to 5. The magnificent holiday decorations we are going to explore through photographs today, as well as 2 additional exhibitions, are on view through early January. Christine May's Ridge Soil, the sculptures spring to life throughout the gardens, and for those of you who have seen them earlier this year, I invite you to come back and see how they shift as the seasons change surround them. Roaring Twenties, the life and style of Marjorie Merriweather Post, is the incredible exhibition which inspired the trees inside the mansion. You can plan your visit online at hillwoodmuseum.org. And if you're not already a member, or you're thinking about the year-end giving or long list of holiday shopping you have left to do, a Hillwood membership lasts all year, it always fits, and there are no supply chain issues. A few notes about today's tour. Your cameras and microphones are not active, so please make yourself comfortable. But that doesn't mean you're off the hook. We still want to hear from you. There is a Q&A module where we'd love to hear your questions about the trees, and feel free to say hello in the chat. Amy Wilber, Hillwood's floral and event decor designer, joined Hillwood in 2016. And the Jazzy Jolly holiday trees we're about to explore mark her 5th year of overseeing the holiday displays. We are going to look at the decor kind of section by section, and as we wrap up each tree, we'll pause and have a moment to answer questions about each section. You can submit questions through the Q&A whenever they cross your mind, and we'll get to them at one of those pauses. With that, I am thrilled to turn you over to Amy.
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm glad that you could come today to experience a virtual tour of the trees. This year was in particular, I think, a very fun kind of year. I think the 1920s is always a theme that is inspiring as a designer. I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about the background of how we plan our trees and how the process actually takes place. So it's usually about a year in the planning, and I meet with several of the different departments. And once the theme is set, we work on individual pieces that will be the inspiration for each tree. So this year with the Roaring Twenties, it was one of those I think exhibitions that there were so many things to choose from, it was a little bit difficult. But one of the things I really wanted to do with the different objects that we use as inspiration is really see how we could fit those into the room in terms of the color palette and have it aesthetically sort of match. I always like to think of these trees as if you were going to have it there permanently, how it would actually work in terms of fitting in and sort of not really standing out too much. The other thing is we have thousands of ornaments here at Hillwood, and this year I was very proud to say that we were able to upcycle 95 to 97% of the ornaments. So we only purchased in 2 objects that were going onto trees this year. And it was one of those processes where we had to go through every bin and figure out, what was going to work. And because we already had the theme and the idea, we were able to then sort through those to make the process a lot easier for when the actual installation happened. The installation happens on Sunday before Thanksgiving. We start at 5 o'clock in the evening. We put up all of the trees. We get them in their spots, make sure that all of the lights work, and then bring over all of the ornaments that are going to go onto each individual tree. The next day, the entire horticulture staff comes in. We start at 7 in the morning and we were finished by 3 p.m. And the one thing that I like to do with these trees is I have the vision for what I think the tree is going to look like, and then I really like to leave it up to the hands of the people who are actually decorating to then use their own vision and their own artistic voice to create these trees. And they never disappoint, and I think that they all turned out absolutely fabulous. We did, however, miss our volunteers again this year. We hope that 2022 will be a year of a little more normalcy, but this time around it was just the entire horticulture staff, so there were 12 of us involved with the trees. Okay, so I'm going to go through and start in the mansion. And again, like we said, the mansion is off of the 1920s exhibit. When you enter into the mansion, I always like to use the first tree as sort of the iconic image of whatever the exhibition is. So this year we chose the midnight dress, or the starry night dress. So the entry tree has a lot of the same color palette as the dress, with the black, the golds, and obviously a lot of the diamonds and the sparkles. And so as you walk in, again, that's the first tree that you're greeted with. And we really wanted to make it pop and stand out, and then also use the star at the top to tie in the aesthetic of the dress as well. So we're just going to go through some of the slides, and you'll see some of the close-ups of some of the ornaments as well from different angles. One thing that I always think is fun about the entrance hall tree is that you can see it from both sides. And then we also do a garland in the entrance hall that will match the tree theme as well. And then there's the kissing ball that is in the entryway also. This is a close-up of the garland, and this is the down view of looking at the tree from the stairs. And this is the other side, like I was talking about, of the entry hall. So you're in the library with this view here. Just a couple more slides. Good. Are there any questions about the entry hall? Okay, so we're gonna move on now to the dining room. So the dining room is always a bit of a challenge because it is quite a large tree. And with the dining room, it really needs to be something that the ornaments have to really pop and stand out when you come in to look at the dining room for the first time. I really want it to have a really sort of big visual impact. So this year we used the Cartier pendant brooch, which is emeralds and diamonds. So the majority of the tree is silver and then diamond ornaments, and then it's highlighted with a lot of green ornaments. And the one thing about the dining room tree is that it's a little bit difficult to photograph. So the first couple of images that you're going to see, I did it without the lights on, just so that you could really see the ornaments. And then some of the next slides will have the lights on, like this one. And the other thing about the dining room is that it really needs to also blend with the tablescape as well. So we wanted to really pick up the stemware that's on the table and then make sure that that fit in with the rest of the motif of the festive holiday setting. And then we also want it to be something that's going to be complementary to what's happening in the breakfast room as well. So these are just some images of the dining room with the table setting, with the floral arrangements as well. And that way you can kind of get a sense of the whole room. The one thing that we did in terms of the tree skirt with this is we used a really nice lush velvet green to hopefully, again, bring out a little bit more of the green in the tree. And I love how it also fits into the green motif of the paintings in the backdrop as well. And that's a quick view of the breakfast room. So the next slide.
And Amy, I'm going to pop in here. We did get a couple of questions about the entry hall right as we were transitioning.
Oh, sure. Of course.
So Vance Van Deel asked if you could talk a little bit about how the kissing ball is made and whether the kissing ball, which is an annual tradition in our holiday decor, is that based on Marjorie Post's use and celebration and decor choices, or just because it's a lovely tradition to add?
So the kissing ball she was revamped this past year. It was something that it was always the same one that we had been reusing year after year, and she got a little tired, so we revamped her this over, actually it was over January, and it's all permanent botanicals, and it got a little bit larger than it typically is, but I think that it's fine. The one thing that's interesting about Hillwood is that Marjorie Merriweather Post was never actually at Hillwood during the holidays. So she was always down in the warmer climates to celebrate the holidays. So we don't actually have a lot of records in terms of what was being decorated here at Hillwood. So I think that the kissing ball is a little bit more of an interpretation of how we would sort of assume she might have decorated the mansion.
I love that. I love that. We also got a question about whether the trees are real or artificial. And I'll go ahead and translate. You mentioned that permanent botanical with the kissing ball. That
Yes.
is horticulture industry for me.
Correct. And yes, all of our trees are permanent botanicals as well. And it makes the watering a lot easier because you don't have to worry too much about them drying out.
Exactly. Kathy asked if there are ways that some of those inspiration items are paired with the trees in the mansion. And the answer to that is that they are all still on view in the exhibition. But as I think some of our photos will show, we do have labels next to each tree that include um, a reference to the exhibition and help
Correct.
folks make those connections on
Yes.
there.
Yes. And that's one thing that I also wanted to just, I guess it's a good segue to mention here, is that when we're thinking about decorating these trees and when the idea is trying to, draw inspiration from a certain object, there's also a part of the decorating process and the planning that I want it to also be something that you don't necessarily have to look or read the sign to translate what's happening on the tree, that you can look at the tree and just think, wow, that's just a really pretty tree. It's decorated really nicely. I could get some ideas of different things that maybe I'll do with my tree. So I don't want it to be very sort of heavy and conceptual that you're only going to have to read the sign to understand what's going on with the tree. So that's one thing that we're always sort of striving for, is again, just to, make something that's beautiful to look at and that's enjoyable and fun and festive for everyone.
All right, let's move on with the drawing room.
Excellent. So the drawing room, this one I thought was actually kind of a fun tree to do this year. We usually never do blues in there. So this one is based off of the Cartier compact and lipstick. And in terms of thinking of, women in the 1920s and then also using the compact and lipstick, I also thought it was a fun tie-in for the drawing room to then also sort of bring in Marie Antoinette's chair that's also in the drawing room as well, because again, it was something that was used for the sake of beauty. So this one really wanted to do a lot of the blues and the diamonds, and then the gold is sort of just a bit of an accent. The blue bow at the top of the tree is again a nod to the Marie Antoinette chair that is there. And then also there are some mirrors that have been placed in the tree as well. And again, this one, I really feel like you can see how it ties into the room and how it picks up the blues from the Sèvres porcelain that's there, and also the tapestries. And you can also see some of the, in the background, you can see a little bit of that blue coming in from the rest of the room and how it then translates into the tree as well.
And Amy, we do have a few comments coming in so far, particularly a handful from our volunteers. Mary Slimp mentioned that the blue really does look spectacular with that Winterhalter portrait, which you could see in a few of those images.
Oh, great.
And Rick mentioned that this is his favorite tree this year, though I think
Oh,
that might be like choosing your favorite child.
yeah, and the one thing that's a little bit different about the tree in the French drawing room is it has a slightly different shape. It's a little bit more leggy in its branches. So I think that's how you also kind of get a little bit of a different feel as well. Great, so we're going to move on to the pavilion. And the pavilion to me, really, I wanted it to be what you think of in terms of the 1920s. And so I always come to think of flappers with feathers and like long strands of pearls. So I really wanted this tree to just sort of, ooze flapper. So it was a really fun tree, I think, to do. And one of the things that I really wanted to sort of incorporate and tie into this tree is being able to use the feathers that we used from the gala, the wall. We did a whole feather wall for the gala. So I wanted to reuse those feathers that we had in that, and we put those into the trees for the pavilion. So I was really pleased that we were able to sort of blend all of that in together. And this is a very difficult tree to photograph. So again, I did the first several photographs of it without any lights on, and I think you can see the decorations a little bit more. And again, it's just one of those trees that I think is a lot of fun. I think that all of the pearl decorations and then the feathers really did to me feel like it was something from the 1920s, and a flapper would be, coming out from behind the tree at any moment. And then again, we also use the same aesthetic to then have the wreath that's up in the pavilion as well. Just right there. Yep.
Sorry about that. I tried to unmute myself and instead advanced all of the slides. We do have a couple of questions. Jennifer Early was doing a great job of paying attention earlier when you mentioned that you purchased 2 items, and you just mentioned that the feathers were among those repurposed from previous events and decor years. What else did we buy this year? What's new?
It's coming up in the visitor center.
Perfect timing. I did not know the answer to that. It's not a plant, I promise.
So for those of you who have come and have been able to see Christine May's sculptures, Rich Soil, it's really one of those things that to me was really moving when I saw them. I got to witness them being installed. I actually helped a little bit to hold one of the poles while it was being installed in the summer. But the thing about these sculptures to me is that they change and that they move depending on if there's sun, if there's not sun, if it's in the morning, if it's the afternoon. And so the whole idea of, evolution of the garden is something that came to mind at first when we wanted to do the visitor center. And one of the other things that I really wanted to keep in mind for the visitor center was also using the theme that Christine Mays also was using as well. And so this idea of paying tribute to the ancestral land in which Hillwood is on, we really wanted to try and tie that into the visitor center tree as well. And so what I did when thinking of this tree and thinking about the sculptures that were in the garden was I really wanted to have this idea of the garden like growing up through the tree. And so I wanted to start with the roots, sort of, I'm going to call them roots of the tree, and how the life of the garden is just carried up through to the very top of the tree. And so you can see at the very bottom of the tree, all of this curly willow. And the curly willow was the other element that we had purchased in this year for the tree. So those were the 2 elements that were purchased. And then all of the flowers, I really wanted to, have it feel like it was a garden. And the one thing that I really was really kind of excited about was the idea for the tree topper. And we actually got to use one of Christine May's crowns that she had made for Hillwood specifically. And then we put a lot of foliage behind it. And then again, more of the curly willow, or what I'm calling the roots of the tree. And it was very sort of symbolic to me that the top of the tree also then sort of paid tribute to, again, the ancestral land that we're on, and not to forget about how even in the garden in winter, when it is just maybe the bare bones or the roots, that there is still life there, and that we can always have something to look forward to for the following year. And I felt that it was very important sort of in the message this year, especially from the past year and a half, almost 2 years that we've had, to just always sort of remember that even in the winter, or even in sort of those bare moments, that we should be reminded that wonderful things are coming. And just like the garden, everything will be in bloom again at some point, and we'll all be able to share the happiness of that together. So that was one of the things in terms of taking an idea, making it a little bit more conceptual in terms of what my thought process was for the tree. But again, being able to just like look at this tree and you can say, oh, you know what, I think I want to put some permanent botanicals in my tree because they're fun, they're kind of colorful, and it also sort of ties in, you know, if you're a gardener at home or you're a floral enthusiast, that you could then also use that in your home decor as well. And we also did the banister and the railing the same, using the permanent botanicals, and at each of the bows you can see there's some of the curly willow branches that are also tying in the theme as well.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for that kind of high level overview as well as the conceptual insight. We did get a question. I know the curly willow is one item that was purchased this year. What was the second one?
Oh, it was the mirrors that were in the
Okay,
tree at the French drawing room. Yeah.
excellent. And I will see if I can go back. I'm going to also let our friends who are watching from home type out some questions. Let me see if I can find that photo of the mirrors, which are really, really fun.
Yeah,
I
you
was
can
in there
I think you can
yesterday,
see them.
and
Yeah.
it took me a while of looking at it before the mirrors really kind of popped out to me. They're so beautifully layered in. Vance asked a question about whether we have always used permanent botanicals.
In the trees or at Hillwood?
Let's answer both, just
Okay.
in case. Because
So
the answer is no for both, right?
correct. So for the most part, like the only thing that in the mansion that is a permanent botanical are any of the arrangements that go on the dining room table. And that was also something that I think when I first started, that started to happen. I do believe that they were using real flowers on the dining room table for a while, and I've heard horror stories about the watering of that and mishaps of how, you know, there was water on the table or something leaked or whatever. So then for me, I actually prefer it because it's a little bit less stressful. In terms of the trees, actually it was the second year that I did the trees, we put in real flowers. It was orchids into the entry hall tree.
The carnations were real too the year before that, right?
Yes, the carnations were the year after.
Oh,
So we
thank you.
did orchids the first year for spectacular, and then the carnations were for whatever exhibit was after spectacular.
That
I'm
would have been 2017, would have been Fabergé.
Yes, for Fabergé. Yep. So we've used both. You know, obviously the real flowers in the tree are amazing, and I do love that as well. And you know, perhaps next year we'll bring that back. But you know, during the sort of pandemic-y time, just in terms of, I'm sure everyone's tired of hearing it, but distribution and supplies, it's not always something that's 100% reliable to be able to do that week after week for this season. So, but
And
hopefully
that's something that
yeah,
we've really experienced in my world. It's for the
yeah,
floral workshops that you lead that is a struggle, but I know you live it each day in and day out. Thomas and Betty asked a question about why the display's theme this year is called the Jazzy Jolly Holiday. And that is just a nod again to the inspiration for the trees in the mansion, which come from the Jazz Age and the Roaring Twenties. Rick asked a question about whether we've ever considered adding wreaths on the outside of the windows on the mansion. We have a lot of swags that cover the ground, but
yes.
not very many wreaths.
No, so on campus, I think there's a total of three wreaths that we have. In terms of hanging wreaths on the outside of the mansion, that would be something that curatorial would have to approve, or have to be something that they would want to have done. So
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that's fun. You mentioned that we used to have more live flowers or cut flowers on the dining room table. We do have this dual purpose. So while Marjorie Post always wanted fresh flowers on view at Hillwood, and we have that amazing cutting garden following in her own tradition that you use throughout the summer.
correct. Yeah.
We still need to be careful and protect all of our structures. We got a question earlier about whether any of these ornaments are available in the shop. And I know some years we've been able to coordinate with that. But since so many of these are past favorites and reused, do you know if the shop was able to get anything similar this year?
I know that the shop has, obviously from years past, have some of the same ornaments that we did use this year as well. I don't know if they're 100%, the exact same, but I know when I was in there the other day, they have a lot that are very similar as well. But there have been times that we've been able to sort of dual purpose, and they have the same thing on the tree. But I do believe that they do have a lot of the same ones in the shop that are on some of the trees, especially the diamondy ornaments.
Excellent. Those are ones that I walked into the French drawing room and was like, I remember these. These are a great favorite.
Yeah.
I have been changing some photos based on some requests to see different areas back or forth. And Ellen just asked a question about what these little clipped papers are on the dining table. And those are menus along with place card holders that are put at each place for guests who would be dining. I believe that brings us to close to the end of our time, and I'm going to stall for just another second. Oh, Candace. Candace, I love your question. Not only are you the perfect last question, it's a great one. Candace asked about whether any of the sculptures from Rich Soil will be remaining in Hillwood's permanent collection. And I am thrilled that we have acquired one of the pieces that greets you just as you leave the visitor center on your way into the mansion. One of those dresses has been purchased, and we are working to figure out exactly how it will be mounted, but it will be installed in our new Collections and Research Center native garden. My guess is sometime next year. And we got one last request for the breakfast room, which is always a favorite with all of those poinsettias and incredible sunlight.
Yes.
I want to thank you all for spending your Thursday afternoon with Amy and with me to look at beautiful decorations here at Hillwood. It's been an absolute pleasure to discuss the process of your work, Amy, and to get really wonderful questions. Thank you all. And I do hope that we will see you at Hillwood very soon. I'm getting a couple more requests of the kissing ball, which I have showed a couple of times. Let me go back. But thank you again for joining us today, and I do hope that we'll see you at Hillwood soon. And I would like to remind you, I just went right by it. Would like to remind you that Hillwood memberships have no supply chain issues, unlike live flowers these days. So I do hope that might help fill some stockings at your houses. And I hope that we'll see you all in 2022. Thanks so much.
Thank you.